Hey.
What do you call him?
I can't do this anymore. Left my past all on the floor. I've been trying to keep it moving. Now we going north, going up 2, 3, up 2, 3. Got this joy inside of me because I can't do this anymore. Left my past all on the floor. I've been trying to keep it moving. Now we going north, going up 2, 3, up 2, 3. Got this joy inside of me because I got the key. We've been really moving places, always on the low. I was shining in the tunnel cause I got the glow. People really hating and it really starts to show. Yeah, we gon' level up again cause that's just how we roll. Yeah, came in with the sauce. Yeah, learned out from the boss. Yeah, I've been learning lessons from the struggles and the losses. Praying for communion for the races since we lost it. I done had enough of it for all the pain and cost anymore. Left my past all on the floor. I've been trying to keep it moving. Now we going north, going up 2, 3, up 2, 3. Got this joy inside of me.
What's up, everybody? What's going on, Ram Fam? So, hey, it's the first time I'm streaming from the morning time, but we're going to do this thing. I have with me a fellow social worker. She is still a student, so that's a good thing because then we can get it fresh off the ground, fresh out of school, what is going on out here. So thank you all for joining. And I have with me this morning Miss Adachi Selas.
Selas, yes.
Selas. Okay, so good morning, Vita. So this morning, man, we're gonna go ahead and get you started with my warm-up questions. Okay, and before we start, because there's also a slideshow just about culture, just answer the questions the way that you see it on the screen. Don't worry about cultural sensitivity and all of that. But
Okay.
before we started, can you let the people know where you are originally from?
Okay, yeah. So I'm originally from Florida. I always say West Palm Beach, but really it's a small area called Loxahatchee in rural Florida. And yeah, now I'm in DC.
Okay, so we're gonna start with this cultural thing, which you're cheating and you can see the beginning. All right, or the end. So you see this, all right?
Yes, I can see it.
So how do you pronounce that?
Water.
Really?
2. I like this game. Hair. Here. Sneakers. Cart, shopping cart. A basket. A purse, wallet.
Is it a purse or was it a wallet?
I'm gonna say this is one of those big wallets. I don't know, you could fit much in there, so.
Okay. All right.
That's a purse. There we go.
All right.
Ooh, an alley.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, what is this? An entryway or a foyer? I think that's what it's called.
Okay. Okay.
Smoothie.
Okay.
Oh, this looks like a homemade popsicle. This is a boatload of stuff.
Oh, okay. That's the last one.
I think they're called wife beaters, right?
Hey, you tell me. I don't know, whatever you call it in Florida.
That's what they call them in Florida. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
That's what they call them.
That's what we call them too in the Midwest. So.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
That was fun.
So, that is that. Hey, Alex. Okay, so next. Do you have any siblings? And if so, what is your birth order?
I do. I have one younger sister and two older sisters. So my birth order is technically middle, but I grew up as the oldest with my younger sister. So it's interesting. I identify as an older sibling, though. That's what I'll
As
say.
an older.
Mhm.
Okay. So now I pulled it up, but I'm having trouble finding it. As always, the people who watch me regularly, they know I always got some type of problem because I pulled it up, but I cannot find it now. But with you being a social worker, I feel like I don't even really need to show you this, but are you familiar with the characteristics that they identify for birth order children?
Now, I know there's a book on this, which I haven't read, but I believe that the oldest sibling is usually the one who is like the leader, who takes on more of the maybe responsibility and like caregiving role. Correct me if that's not right.
Yeah. So, do you believe? I'm still looking for it because that's crazy. I pulled it up and everything. Do you
It
believe
happens.
that you fit those characteristics? That they describe you accurately?
I would say so. I think a lot of times, especially I notice this in my friendships, I tend to be the one that people go to for advice or that people go to for emotional support and things like that. To be that strong figure a lot of the time. So
Mhm.
yeah, I would say so. My parents were older siblings as well, and so I kind of had that in common with them.
Okay, awesome. All right. So, yeah, thank you for that. I feel like people need to know how other people pronounce stuff and what we consider things. So, yeah, we all have different cultures. So, we're going
Yes.
to go
Thank you,
ahead and
Mom.
we're going to get started, man. So, I already let it out of cat out the bag that you're still in school. So, could you let us know where you're going to school
Mhm.
and when will you be graduating or what class you're in?
Yeah, so I'm currently pursuing my MSW at Howard University, the Mecca, and I will be graduating in May 2025, so this coming spring.
Ooh, okay. That's fast. How you feel about that?
I have mixed feelings for sure. For context, I went into my master's degree straight from undergrad, so I have not yet been in the working world full on, and so it's something that feels somewhat intimidating. But I'm also excited to start using the skills that I've learned over this 12+ year journey.
Yeah. So, what field or concentration are you majoring in?
So I'm currently majoring in families and child welfare within my MSW. So I am direct practice all the way.
Yes. So, for those of you who have been watching and you've been listening to my fellow social workers, this is the first one that we have that may or may not be able to answer your questions about CPS. Because you all know the point of my channel is to educate and let everybody know that when you hear social worker, we don't snatch up babies. Like there's a lot of
Right.
things that we do. So with that in mind, what were your first impressions of a social worker?
Just in general in social work.
Yeah, just like as a person before you entered the field, when you heard that someone was a social worker, what did you think?
I would say I definitely heard those stereotypes of them being somewhat invasive into the lives of families, but I also saw the other side, or I heard about the other side of them sometimes being the only person for a child or for a student if they're in the school that really could be there for them if their parents weren't, or that could really see how a lot of the things in their life were affecting them and kind of motivate them in that way. So I also heard that social workers don't get paid very much. That was always the thing that I was told when I told people that I wanted to do it. They would say, "Oh, but you're not going to make money." And then I would get upset.
Yeah. So along with that, the amount of money that you made, but why did you become a social worker?
Yeah, great question. So I started out in undergrad studying psychology. And at first, I thought that I wanted to continue study developmental psychology, work with kids as a therapist or a psychiatrist. But as I got further into my psych degree, I realized that the path for psychology was just a little bit too narrow for my ambitions. I also started studying sociology as a minor, and I started realizing that the social determinants of health were very important, realizing that a person's environment can really determine their experience outside of what's going on internally. They kind of work together. And once I started seeing this other lens that we can look through things like mental health and family systems and these other things, I felt more drawn to that perspective because it was broader to me and it provided a lot more important context. Whereas what I was seeing in psychology was very much individual. Yeah, I didn't see that in my classes. We were talking more about systems. And so the sociology, social work route really drew me there. And then I started looking into, what type of careers you can have with an MSW and realized that the path after you get your MSW is so much broader than if I were to go to a counseling PhD or a counseling program. So yeah, I wanted to have more options.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's those options. That's what got me too. Like, I don't want to be stuck because if you do mental health, if you concentrate in mental health, you can still do the other things. And if you, like in your case,
Right.
if you do CPS, you can still come on over and be a therapist or in a medical hospital. Like, yeah, it's so broad. So do you tell people that you are a social worker, or do you just use your title, or that you're becoming a social worker? Do you just use your title?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think right now I'm still in between, like, I'll tell people that I'm pursuing my MSW, or I'll tell people that I'm an aspiring social worker. I don't feel like I can fully take that title on just yet, which is neither here nor there. But yeah, I'll say aspiring is usually the word I use.
Okay. Hey, you about to graduate. You
Right,
can
it's
go there
coming
and
up.
claim. Hey, you're a social worker in your heart. Hey.
That's
So when
true.
you do say that though, what is the very next question that people ask you about becoming a social worker?
Hmm. I think it's usually two things. It's what you asked, which is what brought you to that? Like, why do you want to pursue that? And
Mhm.
if it's someone who is more familiar with the path, they are the ones who usually ask me, "Oh, what type? Like, what kind of social worker do you want to be? Are you direct practice or macro?"
Mhm. Oh, so people actually use those words, like the average person, they say macro to you?
Well, I'm around a lot of students, so that might be why.
Okay,
If it's not that, it's more administrative or policy, those type of words.
okay, that's nice. What, so let's back up before I say that. Have you started doing internship, or well, I know you have, but for the people, have you started doing internships or field placements or what one would call practicing? Have you done that yet?
I have. Yeah, I can kind of go into the history of that a little bit. So this is my second year. So each year at Howard, we do an internship. And my first year, I was an intern at DC Child and Family Services Agency, or CFSA. And I was shadowing and supporting the case managers there in the out of home team. So if you're not familiar, that is the team who works with kids who have already been placed with a foster family. And then this summer, I was an intern at the dorm, which is a private intensive outpatient program. And I worked there with young adults doing individual coaching and co leading therapeutic groups.
Okay. So in your field, have you had a difficult situation yet? If so, what was that? What was that difficult situation? Or the most,
Mm,
sorry, it's the most difficult.
yeah, I have to think about that because because the two experiences were so different, they come with different types of difficulties. I would say the most difficult situation I've had was probably at the dorm, which is the intensive outpatient, because the clients that we have are such high acuity. And I think that I, as a social worker, had to really learn how to balance things like crisis management with doing regular therapeutic coaching, very much in session type of work. And realizing that when people, young adults, are dealing with these higher level or intense or high symptomology mental health issues, they're not always going to be able to keep appointments, or they might need support with things like housing and employment and things. And if the place that you're at is not necessarily, I won't say equipped, but they're not geared towards that, they're more very much mental health versus case management, it can put you in a difficult place of being in between and trying to do both, is what I'll say.
Yes.
The team was very supportive. I think because I was new, that was just something I had to learn to balance.
And it's probably not going to end, because even for me, when my therapy clients have a particular issue, it's just so automatic to go into case management and things like that. Like, oh, let me help find this for you. Let me find this, help you do this. But that's really not what I'm supposed to be doing as a therapist. That's why there's case managers out here and community support workers. That's very difficult. So I don't think, well, I mean, I can't really speak for you, but I just think that that's not going to go away, because we've learned it. It was a part of our curriculum, all of our roles. So yeah, that is difficult.
And it's within us to want to. Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
So finish, go ahead.
I was agreeing with you in saying that I think as a person who is pursuing social work, it's within us to want to do this wraparound service. And it's hard sometimes to recognize that, depending on, if you are working in an agency and not necessarily having your own private practice or those type of things, that it can be difficult to manage. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you had a situation yet where your morals conflicted with the legal rights of your clients?
My morals conflicted with the legal rights of my clients. I think that this has come into play again when I've been in internships, and I've seen people, either whether they're on my caseload or not, who need a higher level of services but are not able to access them because of their economic means. They might not have the funding, they might not have the resources to access the level of care that they need at a point in their life. And morally, for me, I would really love to see a system where we can offer those things to anyone who needs them. And at the same time, I understand that as social workers, we have to value our time and our resources as well, and our compensation as well. So yeah, kind of balancing that, how do we make services as accessible as possible without devaluing the people who are providing them?
Yeah. And definitely the part of what you said about taking care of yourself, like we're just in this helping field. I wonder how often nurses actually, like nurses and doctors, what do their statistics look like for their self-care? Yeah, I'm gonna have to find somebody to ask that question. What do you think are the most important skills for a social worker to possess?
Ooh, yes. Okay, so I would say, from what I've been learning, but also in practice, I think that some of the most important skills are adaptability, because the number one thing I've seen when I've actually started practicing and doing these internships is that with social work, though you can have a set of job duties and have a set schedule, things change sometimes day by day, hour by hour, depending on who you're working with and their systems. And so you have to be adaptable in that you can switch on a dime if you need to then do something else or support in a different way. I would also say we have to be, of course, empathetic and conscientious, because I think that even though when we go through our schooling in social work and we're taught the importance of this, in practice, it can sometimes be easy to forget that we have our own biases as well. And so I'll say empathetic, but I'll also say self-reflective. I think the process of self-reflection can never stop because we never know what clients we're going to be encountering, and we don't know what might trigger us or what might come up for us. And so if we're always self-reflecting, that can be a way of, digging into what we need and making sure we're getting what we need so that we can see the clients and meet them where they are and not have any bias coming through from us towards them.
Those are great, wonderful answers. And I love that you're using the word bias to know that we all have them and we need to be cognizant of our biases.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna veer off a little bit because I love that word. So have you seen this psychology expert, Dr. Cheyenne Bryant? She was on Nick Cannon's podcast and Cam Newton's podcast.
Ooh, I'm not sure I have, but I should check her out.
You would have, but when you talk about bias, right? So the last episode that I did a review of her appearance on their shows, and overall, my conclusion is she came with her bias and she put that onto them and left her professionalism behind. That's my personal opinion. Because, Cam Newton and Nick Cannon, they have a lot of kids. And they don't have them by one woman or two women. They have them by a lot of women. And you can see her showing her disapproval for that practice and that behavior, that lifestyle. And so a lot of people thought she was doing a good job because she's questioning them. She's telling them that they're creating broken homes and all of these questions. Well, they weren't questions. They were positions that she was putting on for them. So if you get interested and you have the time, like I would recommend that you watch that, because a person operating in their bias and not being able to be objective is what I saw. That's what I saw.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But the more I talked about that out loud just now, because they have multiple kids by multiple women, in your experience so far, have you had to be on the other end? Have you had a client, male or mom or dad, with multiple kids by multiple people? And what have you seen be the effects of that?
Yes, I definitely have. When I was an intern at CFSA, and we had some families who they had a lot of kids, and sometimes it's a situation where the siblings can't all be together because of this. So that's definitely one effect that I've seen of that, is that, say a family has 6 children within it, one foster family might have 2, one might still be with the parents, and then maybe the other 3 are with a different foster family or a kinship provider, what have you. So that's definitely one effect, just the larger family that you have, because it can be difficult for foster families to accommodate all of them at once. I would also say it affects visitation. So depending on the relationship between the biological parents, right, they might not want to or be able to visit all the kids at once, whether that's because of internal family conflict or logistics or, having different foster families to coordinate with. But what we try to do is at least have all the siblings be able to visit each other at one time. And so that bond can still stay intact. As far as the bias, I have observed that some social workers, even me sometimes, will question, if there aren't resources in the community, it's that question of, well, why keep having more kids? But when you really investigate those type of circumstances, there are often a lot of reasons that if we look beyond our bias, we can see that it's not what we think. So I think that that type of bias does permeate for sure, even when we
Yes.
don't want it to.
Yeah, so you got to catch yourself for real. Okay, so look,
Yeah.
and then it sounds like you put a lot of thought into your field of study. So yeah, you definitely are giving some very thoughtful
That's my dad.
answers for certain. Congratulations.
Thank you.
um, actually, I'm gonna stick with that because again, you're the person in this part of the field. And I was just
Mhm.
really upset by that episode. So,
I can see why.
yeah, so as you were just saying about it can disrupt visitation and all of that, and
Yes.
then people need to understand the different reasons why people have these kids. And what's your exact words, but that's what you were saying.
Mhm.
Um, have you seen a situation yet where resources wasn't necessarily what was needed, that perhaps while you were talking to the child or something, they were having an issue with not being able to see their other parent because whatever, they spend too much time at the other house and with the other kids and whatever else. Have you seen that?
I have, and I think the one time where, or not the one time, but an instance where resources or financial resources, time wasn't necessarily the issue is because of a disruption in the relationship between the biological parents and the foster parents, or the biological parents and the kinship providers. They might be within that side of the family. Maybe it's the paternal side together or on the maternal side. And sometimes when there is that conflict between, or there's resentment or judgment coming from one side, it can make it difficult. And the social worker sometimes has to be a mediator in those conflicts to make sure that it's not affecting either the kids seeing each other or the kids seeing their other parent. Another instance it could be is a legal issue. So maybe it's not necessarily resources, but a lot of times the child welfare system has a very high crossover between the justice system, whether it's juvenile justice or with adults. And so that can be another barrier. We have to put parameters in place if maybe there's also a legal case going on that makes it so visitation is not possible, or has to be have specific parameters set around it. So I would say those two things, other than just resources, are a way that sometimes it can get disrupted, and means that the social worker has to sometimes put in extra effort to make it happen.
Yes. And so for the viewers, if you can give a few examples of these legal situations, whatever that would make it a bit difficult, or even not the legal situations, but also like you were saying about the conflicts between the parents. I know those were two examples. But if you can be a little bit more specific or just give additional information about that for the viewers.
Yeah, I can say so. I've definitely worked with families where, say, there is a family unit, mom and dad, and the dad's sibling is the one who is taking the kids because, CPS had to remove them from the father for certain reasons. There's many reasons that it could be, but
Mhm.
because this other sibling now is a kinship provider for the kids, I've seen it where resentment can build up in that, whether it's judgment based on the treatment of their niece or nephew, because that's also, a part of their family, or it's because of, them not always aligning with what they need to do for reunification. That can cause a strife as well between family members if they feel like the effort is not necessarily being put in to reunify. That can put stress on the kinship provider. And so when there are these internal family dynamics, internal family system disruptions, that can be a reason why maybe they'll put barriers up. Like, oh, I can only bring the kids to see you on these specific days. Oh, well, I work those days. Or they'll tell the social worker, like, you need to come pick them up because I won't take them over there. Like those type of those type of things that can come off maybe sometimes as petty, but what it tells us is that there's just a disruption in the family system, and we need to do some mediation to kind of mend that so that it's not affecting the kids. With the legal side, of course, if one of the parents is incarcerated, which happens often as well, they wouldn't be able to necessarily see the children. Maybe they'll do a phone call, or maybe they'll do letters in that way. Or if, incarceration is the big one, but I could see where having an ongoing legal case as well could affect a predetermined visitation agreement.
Yes. Great answer.
Was that specific enough? I'm trying to not break confidentiality too much, but say things that I
terms and everything. Yeah. Okay. So previously we were talking about bias, right? So how important or empowering do you think it is for people of color to remain in the field of social work? And specifically your concentration.
Yeah, so this kind of brings me to my research as well, because my research is in the over-medication of Black foster youth, but really it's generally about the experience of Black youth in child welfare. And youth in our community are disproportionately represented in the child welfare system. I want to say some recent statistics are something like upwards of 20% are represented in the child welfare system, which is disproportionate to their representation in the overall population. So it's really a large issue of Black children being the most likely to be separated from their families versus being provided in-home services for the family and for the children. And so I think it's imperative for social workers, and Black social workers specifically, to be in this field, because these kids need people to work with them, to provide services to them that can be more understanding of their experience, that have, cultural similarities, just that the kids can see themselves in and that they can feel comfortable with. Because a lot of times when there is that connection, the kids are more likely to open up and be cooperative and accepting of our help and our services. And so it's very important. We need to be able to see each other in that way.
Yeah. So me knowing that the stated goal by the government is to keep families together, or to do some type of reunification. How prevalent, I think, would be the word, or what is the incidence in which you see those fellow social workers who identify as you do getting in the way of this reunification or keeping the kids together?
So you're saying, how do I see Black social workers maybe working against or creating a barrier to reunification?
Yeah,
or have I seen that?
Just even like taking the kids, right? We just go with that. Social workers take kids. If they have so much of a bias that they can't put in the work to keep the families together and to provide the resources, and they just like, nope, the best thing is to take these kids. How often have you seen that, or what do you know to be the reality?
So, and I'll speak for DC because I have only seen our child welfare system here, and I wasn't necessarily in CPS on the investigation side. I was working with kids who were already out of the home. But what I do know about the philosophy and what I've seen social workers really use as a measure for, is this a case where we can provide in-home services or remove them from the home, is really immediate danger. So CFSA's philosophy is, unless you can determine that the child is in immediate danger, do everything you can to provide services, resources, mental health, school transportation, whatever it is, so that they can stay with their parent, or, parental counseling, substance use counseling, anything you can do unless they are in immediate danger, that's when we would remove. So again, I wasn't on the CPS side, but I just know that is what a lot of the social workers that I was interacting with go by. And it's really more of this last resort type of thing.
Yeah. So thank you again for clarifying that you work with children who are already out of the home and you were not an investigator. So
no.
What, for those people who don't know, what exactly does that mean? Because y'all all social workers, y'all all got something to do with my kids being gone or whatever. What's the difference between an investigating social worker and the ones that you do?
Sure. So yeah, there's kind of three different types. There's in-home services, out of home, which is what I was in, and then CPS and investigations. So CPS is what you were saying, right? That's where the stereotype comes from, that social workers remove kids from the home. But really what it is CPS investigators are the social workers that respond when a mandated reporter or a neighbor or whoever it is that's making this hotline call to report that a child needs a welfare check or there's suspected abuse, neglect. They are the ones who respond, who go to the homes, to interview families, to see how the children are living, to investigate what type of resources they have, if there's any substance abuse going on, or if there are parental mental health issues going on, those type of things. They're the ones who gather the data to determine if it is safe and appropriate for the kids to remain with their biological family, their family of origin, or if they need to come into care. So then there's also in-home, which is the next step. So if a CPS investigative social worker goes in and determines that the child is not in immediate danger, but there's a high level of need for services. Maybe the parents need a substance use counselor. Maybe they need help getting onto TANF or SNAP so that they can, better provide food for maybe they need, transportation to get their kids to school because the parents work. Anything like that, that would go to an in-home social worker who would be the ones who are coordinating and providing services for the kids to still be on their caseload, but they're staying with the biological parents. The out of home, which is where I was, has the adoptions team. So kids who are on the list basically to get adopted, to be matched with a family, and then, which I also worked with. And I started out in clinical case management, the out of home team. And what we do is work with kids who it's been determined that they need to come into care, meaning they need to be placed with a foster family because they were in immediate danger. And we, get them placed with foster families. We make sure that these homes are also safe, right? We don't want them to go from one unsafe home to another. A lot of times I've seen mental health, making sure that the kids are okay while they're with the foster family, and then helping the foster family and supporting them to best care for these kids. And the adoption team is very similar, but the goal is to get the kids adopted and follow up with families who would want to be with them forever.
Yeah. Thank you. Very informative. Have you ever dealt with transference or counter-transference with your clients?
Hasn't everyone? Definitely.
How did you manage it?
And it's, yeah. And especially because I've worked with a lot of clients, especially over this summer, who are a similar age to me, or slightly older, but still, in their 20s and in their early or late teens. And I think that's why I advocate for self-reflection, because with countertransference, you can really start to see yourself in a client in a way that can determine how you interact with them, which is not necessarily always a negative thing, but it's something to watch, right? Because we want to make sure that we are treating this person as themselves and not who we may see them as, or because what we would want because we see ourselves in them. Transference hasn't happened to me as much. I will say, being a Black social worker, though, when you're in environments where that is the minority, like, you might be one of two Black social workers on a team, the clients who are also Black or who are also people of color, sometimes they come to you, more, even if they're not necessarily on your caseload, because they have that connection to you and they feel comfortable with expressing certain things to you or being their authentic self with you. And so that's where I'd say the extent of transference that I've experienced has been in that way.
Yes, yes. And so we talked about the importance, again, of you identifying as Black, working with Black clients. So an additional question to that is, clients whom identify the same way as you. So we're not just going to go Black, just all kind of ways that you identify yourself. As we see, your pronouns are she and they. So how important do you think it is for clients who identify as you do to see you in the field?
I think it's very important. I do identify as Black, Caribbean. My family's Jamaican, non-binary, neurodivergent, all the things. And I worked this summer with a lot of neurodivergent clients, whether it was, ADHD, autism, communication disorders. And just for them to be able to, when they're in a world that has been constructed and made for neurotypical people, as an example, it is very, I found that it's very calming, it's very affirming for them to explain certain things about the way that they communicate, or the things that they need to, help with their focus or attention, or the ways that they might need you to support them with working memory or these other things, scheduling, all these things. So I think it's very important, depending on the identities. I also ran a identity and sexuality group for my internship, and having someone who identified within the LGBTQ community was also very important for them, because again, it's these unspoken things that a lot of times we are forced to explain when we're not part of an identity that aligns with the dominant society. And just having a space where you can let that go and not have to explain and be your authentic self, I've seen in my clients that it's very important to them. So we have to.
Yes. Yes. So with that, we know this word rapport, building rapport. How
right?
do you go about doing that? And then how much of your identity do you reveal to your clients?
That's a good question. I think engagement, that first initial engagement phase, is something that I'm even still working on, having a lot of new clients. But usually what I do is that I lead with authenticity. And what I mean by that is I don't put on an air of, overly professional or very, rigid or anything like that. I'm very much myself. I talk the way that I talk. I put in humor sometimes. I will do things to put them at ease and let them know that because I'm going to be authentic, I want it to be a space for them to be authentic. And I'll even say, I might do things a little bit differently. How do you feel about that? Yeah. And usually what that has resulted in is putting people at ease very quickly. So we can then start to build the rapport, and my authenticity leads into theirs.
Very beautiful. Beautiful. So overall,
And for the second part of the question,
oh, go ahead. Sorry, I have a lag on my end, so go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, because you had asked me how much I reveal. Usually I just reveal whatever I think will be like relevant, or if I get asked a direct question. Because sometimes I'll have clients and they just ask me a direct question and I'll say, yeah, this is my identity, right? But especially if I know it's an identity they hold as well, then I will self-disclose, because I think it just brings that therapeutic relationship into harmony.
Yes. Overall, how do you find that social workers help each other?
In my experience, and I'm hoping this is not just because I'm a student, but in my experience, yes, for sure. I think that social workers are the ones who have reminded me the absolute most the importance of self-care, because they have been in social work longer than me, and a lot of times they've had periods where they didn't take care of themselves enough, and they don't want me as a new social worker to adopt that. They emphasize, like, no, take time for yourself, set boundaries with work life and your clients, pursue things that make you want to keep doing the work and that you're passionate about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because over there on your side, I don't know why I don't listen
Right.
to the therapy, because people don't really much stereotype, but I know that it's been said that if you can last 2 years in CPS, then you kind of got it made. Oh, yeah. The people of the majority that have been giving you this advice, how long have they been in the field?
It's been anywhere from, people who are recently graduated or they're a year out from graduation, to people who have been in the field for 20 years. Like it really depends whether it's like a coworker, a supervisor, another social work student, or recent grad. It's really across the board that they all say very similar things. Like don't do anything that you will regret, or not do anything that you'll regret. Like don't not spend time on yourself and your interests in the things that you need, because that's where you'll burn out.
Yeah. Burnout is real over there. Me too. I mean, but therapists have therapists. At least they should. Listening to one person and switching to a different diagnosis, like that can be taxing.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of already talked about the peer support and supervision that you get. How important do you think that is?
I think supervision is very important. And I think really you should hold on to it as long as you can. I know that a lot of times, because supervisory social workers, they get paid to do that, as they should. Sometimes we have to pay for supervision depending on where you get it. But I think that for as long as you can, you should be, even if it's in a more unofficial capacity, because I have gotten a lot out of even just bringing a case to my supervisors and saying, I think I should handle it this way. Here is my reasoning for that. What do you think? And no matter what they say, I learned something. And I think it's very valuable when, as social workers, we do have a lot of this diverse experience in different fields. We can be very interdisciplinary in the way that we collaborate on cases, or even that we consult. Maybe they're in that place. And so I think it's very important, especially for newer social workers.
Yes. So I'm coming close to the end of the questions that I have laid out. So I'm giving people this opportunity now. Think of your questions. Go ahead and post questions here so we can ask Adachi. It's really great to have someone who is actually still in school to join me today, and totally, she's not in mental health, so that's very good. So guys, please go ahead and type questions in the chat. While we wait for that, what would you like to tell the next social work student?
Ooh. Yeah, I'm thinking about the people who and other universities, because it's that tell them is no matter what you do in social work, you will make a difference in someone's life. So be very decisive, be very careful in. But I think that we only have but so much time, and social work is such a field that takes a lot out of us. A lot of us are very naturally giving. And so, yeah, I would say whatever your passion, whatever your interest is, whatever brought you into social work, always remember your why and let it guide you.
Yes. I lost a lot of what you said in the beginning, but that end, they definitely, yeah, I don't know what's up with my computer. Okay. So,
Oh, no.
self-care. You've talked about self-care a lot today. How are you going to do your self-care for the remainder of this weekend or going into the week?
Sorry, could you say that one more time? I think it was
I
cutting
said,
out.
what would you do for your self-care with the remainder of this day and going into your week?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Tomorrow is my birthday. So I definitely am going to do some self-care, self-glam. Thank you. Some glam for tomorrow. I do have to go to class, but I want to be extra birthdayed out. So I'm going to do that for sure. And I think I'll spend some time away from screens because it's just been such, with assignments and everything, I've just been having a lot of extra screen time. And so I think that having a screen break is one of the best things that I found for self-care, honestly.
Yes, I think that's good for everybody. So you gave a lot of great information about your field of social work. Is there anything that you would like to add that maybe I didn't ask you about to educate people on your field?
I would say that particularly when working with families who, are whose kids are within the child welfare system, and you'll probably have heard this before, but trauma informed, right? I definitely found that trauma informed care and trauma informed practice has opened up the way that I view the needs of families, the ways that sometimes we interact with them and that they interact with us. And trauma is very complex. And so I would encourage anyone who wants to do that type of work, look into it, get a training, read a book, talk to someone who is very informed in that way about, trauma informed care.
Yes. So I actually have a question for you. What is your ideal first job? That's a very good question. What's your ideal job post-grad?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think I'm still thinking about this because when I first came in, I was very much set on being a case manager. I was like, I don't care if it's the most basic definition of what people think a social worker is. That's what I want to do. And I do still want to work in supporting children and families. I think my ideal job, though, would be a job where I could do case management, but there's also an education component. I've gotten so much out of being able to run therapeutic groups, out of being able to do presentations, psychoeducation presentations for parents on skills and relationship. And so I want to combine, and in my research, I want to combine those two things so that we can do some of the preventative work and also the response work, because I think they're both equally important. Yeah.
So that sounds like meso work and not micro.
Yes, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
So have you thought about, but see, you need an LI to be a school social worker. But has this made you start thinking more towards maybe a school social worker, or I don't know, policy and practice?
I definitely know that I want to do direct practice, and maybe my path will lead me a different way in the future. We never know. School social work, I'm not as inclined for that setting just because of what I've heard about, how administration within schools can either control or inform a lot of what you do. And I would love to have a little bit more freedom than that.
That is true.
But again,
that is
we'll
true.
see.
Now, I wasn't a school social worker per se by the title, the description, all of that, because school social workers, they work for the Department of Health. Wait. Yeah.
Right.
They work for the Department of Health. Whereas I was a contractor from a core service agency as a school-based therapist.
Okay.
And yes, that's why I couldn't do it anymore. I did a year and a half. I couldn't do it. No. Because you got these teachers and people and all these, they're referring children for services, but because the teacher, which is all understandable, but we have a job too. So because the teacher might be frustrated that this particular child who's getting pulled for services, or it's testing season, so they don't want you coming and pull the kid out. Like, well, I don't understand why I'm here. Like, I really don't. And when a child gets in trouble, whatever it is, they acted out in class, they got in a fight, whatever, sometimes we're left out of that information. Whereas our responsibility to build a rapport with the child parent, but if you want to deal with it because this is a disciplinary issue, they leave you out and you don't find out about it until they're like ready to kick the kid out, or until the parent is upset and they're like, blah blah blah, got into it, because this happened to me. They're like, blah blah blah, got into a fight, and they trying to suspend them. I'm like, I did not even know that. I'm here at the school. I did not know that they got into a fight. So yeah, I don't know how they do it. That's
right.
Yeah. No, not to try to knock if you want to go on that career.
Right.
For me, that does not work. If I show up every day, I need to do what I'm supposed to do for this kid. How do you feel like you'll be able to pursue what it is that you do want to do post grad?
So can you say that one more time?
How do you think you will be able to pursue that ideal job? Because I heard in your answer things that are definitely not what you're doing, and they're not micro. I heard of meso. So how do you think you'll be able to find that perfect job?
I think it might be innovating, like, say I was a case manager for the government or a different community agency. I love to plan things. I don't mind starting something. Like, I would love to integrate a program in which we could do education right there, wherever we're providing those other services, or maybe virtual as well. And if I have to be the one to start it, that's okay. I can have my clients and do my one-on-one things, and then do another program or group within that in the community. And I think that a lot of the social workers I've seen or that I've worked with, they think the same way. You know, if there's a need and we are not already seeing it, how can we create it? And that's kind of the mindset that I have now as well.
Yes. Yes. So we got a comment for you. That should be everybody's mission, is to help the underrepresented in our community. Especially child welfare. Again, that's how it happens. They think we just snatch up kids.
Yes.
You need somebody to be there for you. Okay, so as we go ahead and wrap up, because my questions have come to an end, do you have any social media or anything that you would like to share with everyone?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. My other social medias are not connected to social work necessarily. I'm not with the integration like you. I admire that you're doing that, because I think eventually I definitely will. And I think it's so cool to be able to reach people in that way. It's awesome. But yeah, I would say you can look me up on LinkedIn, Adachi Selas.
Yes, LinkedIn, great place to be. And you might be able to find that ideal job.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess with that, I guess we go on ahead and wrap it up. And I'll go ahead and say my outro. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I would like to thank my guests for joining me, or simply thank you for watching the pre-recorded episode. No matter what your birth order is, how you self-identify, and whether you like pancakes or waffles. If this is the first time you're hearing it today, I want you to know that you are loved. You were put here for a purpose that only you can fulfill. Until next time, take care of yourself. Be sure that you like and share the videos, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notifications bell. This is RealRam out.